welcome back to Cult Radio A Go-Go Live, and we are on the air with our first guest of the evening. A true honor to speak with this man, even though he's like, oh, he has no idea. Ladies and gentlemen, we would like to welcome our first guest of the evening, Mr. Frank Henenlotter. You're on the air live with Terry and Tiffany. Welcome to the show.
How you doing? Well, I'm glad to be here.
Frank, I just want to let you know that I've been such a fan of all of your films, but I think probably your best film is Bad Biology.
Oh, good. I'm glad to hear that, because that's my favorite now. That's my new favorite.
It is like your current one always your new favorite, or?
No. Oh, God, no. When I made Basket Case 3, I left the business for 16 years, so...
Is it true that the reason that you left the business for 16 years with Basket Case is because really they were kind of pursuing you to make number 4 and you didn't want to do that?
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, that's part of it. I couldn't get anything. The business drastically changed in the early 90s.
Right.
The theaters that played the kind of films I like making, that played exploitation films, were disappearing. The companies that were funding those kind of films were disappearing. The video companies that put those kind of films out were disappearing. So the marketplace underwent this gigantic overhaul that it never really recovered to, because there's no exploitation theaters today.
Right.
So I couldn't get the kind of nonsense I wanted to have made. I couldn't get the funding for it. All anybody wanted, no matter what I gave them, they would look at it and go, well, we don't like this, but can you give us Basket Case 4? And I'm going, well, I don't like that either. So, it was like an impasse, and I figured, I would just take a break from the business. I never expected the break to last 16 years, but it did, so that's that.
Well, I want to let you know that one of our most loyal listeners sent me an email, and his description of you is he takes long hiatuses, but when he comes back, it's like, bam, it's with a vengeance. So that's a great compliment.
It means if I make another film, it won't be as good. I should take another 16 years off.
It really is kind of a blessing and a curse when you have a hit thing going on like Basket Case, because it is true that Hollywood just wants you to keep doing it over and over and over, or just the film circuit itself, maybe not even just Hollywood.
Yeah, I remember reading the review in Variety for Basket Case 3, a film I really, absolutely hate.
Really?
And the Variety review was very complimentary and said, well, if this is what they want to keep doing, we can't wait for number 4 and 5. And I thought, oh, no. So, it's because it's a franchise. It's pre-sold with the name, et cetera, et cetera. That's why they make remakes today.
Right.
Yeah.
It's just, there's no creativity out there. It's just, what can you give us that's the same and we'll make money? That's all.
Now, I know that you've mentioned that, you just mentioned it, and I've also seen you mention it in other interviews, that, you weren't particularly fond of Basket Case 3. Was there a particular reason why that one more so than the other?
Well, yes, it stunk, but also, it wasn't the film I wanted to make. Either I misunderstood, or maybe, I don't know, it's hard to remember now, but I thought in the wake of the success of Frankenhooker that SGE would be happy doing another unrated horror film. Mm-hmm. Now, I don't know if we talked about it and they changed their mind, or I just made this up, or this is my wishful thinking. I don't remember anymore. But I went into it hoping to do another film where I could go back to like the first Basket Case and mix comedy with excessive gore.
Right.
And the first thing I learned is, well, no, there's no excessive gore going to be allowed to it. Second thing I learned is they didn't even like the plot. They considered the scenes with the birth of the baby Belial's offensive. And I guess it was in the original version, because it ran for pages and pages of liquid flying in the air and all kinds of ghastly things coming out of poor little Eve. But the end result was a film that was more comedy than anything else, and not what I had in mind. But I was contracted to make a finished film, and there was a problem with cash, and, days are ticking away, and it was easier for me to complete this if it was a comedy than it was if it was something else. And as we were doing it, I just knew this was out of control, and I just didn't know what to do about it. So it's my fault, but what a disaster it is.
Well, when you're involved in something like that, it's like even when we do a show, we can tell immediately when it's working, and we can tell when it's not working, and you just get that feeling. So when you were like in the middle of it and you just felt it wasn't working, did you just not care and you didn't try?
Oh, no. I cared and I tried, but I was so close I didn't know what to do.
Yeah.
And I just, there were so many other problems. Beaton beating you down. Days are flying away. I needed time to sit and rewrite it. And instead what I was doing was rewriting it at the end of filming every day when I was exhausted. So the rewrites were even stranger than if, than if I had just left it alone. So it was I really needed time to just sit back and come up with a whole other excuse for doing Basket Case 3 rather than simply a continuation of Part 2.
Right. Now, the situation with, Basket Case 3 and them kind of cutting the gore and stuff out like that, or not wanting it to be as gory, that wasn't the first time you would run into issues with censorship. They actually tried to cut all the gore out of Basket Case 1, too.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, it's always been a problem. And they did it with Brain Damage also. But Basket Case 1, the first company that put it out at midnight, mind you, was a company that's not around anymore called Analysis Releasing Corporation. And I got wind that there was trouble when they said, oh, we have a way to make it more of a comedy. And I went, uh-oh, what does that mean? They said, we're going to take out all the blood. And I said, well, wait a minute. That's not going to make it more of a comedy. It's going to make it a lousy comedy because the gore is the punchline
right.
of much of that. Well, they said, oh, we know better, not you. And I tried to have my name taken off the film. It was very unpleasant. I said to them, could you please at least release it uncut in one city, and it's at midnight, so try one version and try another way. No, we know better. You're just the filmmaker. Get out of here. So they opened it in New York, Houston, and San Francisco, missing all the gore in the film, and the film died. It just did nothing, and I would walk past the theater and there'd be, 3 people online. No one wanted to see it. What I think was happening was, I believe Analysis was paying the theaters to keep it in the theater. So it was an absolute disaster. What saved it was Joe Bob Briggs, the drive-in movie critic. They wanted to open the film in Dallas at a drive-in. And Joe Bob had already he saw the film at Cannes, and already, when I say it opened, he saw the film at Cannes. It's not like it played at the Cannes Film. It played at the Cannes Film Festival, but it wasn't in the competition.
Right.
Like every other piece of sleaze out there, that's how you sell your movie in the marketplace. That's really what the Cannes Film Festival is
and
for.
It's not that the Cannes Film Festival doesn't have sleazy film.
Yeah. So Joe Bob saw it there, and he was writing these rave reviews about the film. And I didn't know who he was. And, I'm reading some of his reviews, and I'm going, who the hell is this nut? And so he was a champion for the film, and he wanted to host the Dallas drive-in premiere. And we contacted him, and we said, well, Joe Bob, do you know that the version they want to show is not the version you saw at Cannes? And he said, well, okay, let me contact them. He contacted Analysis and said, I ain't doing it unless I'm playing the version I saw at Cannes. I want the uncut version. So they showed it at the drive-in and then left the uncut print to screen at Dallas at midnight. And what happened was, all of a sudden, in a week or 2 weeks, it was selling out in Dallas. Now, it was doing deadly business in Houston, and there it was selling out in Dallas. So Analysis figured out, okay, so they quietly replaced all the cut prints at the 3 theaters that were showing it with the uncut print.
All right.
And suddenly, overnight, in New York, I remember walking past the theater one night and seeing this crowd bending around the corner. And I was stunned. I thought, well, what is this here for? And I recognized somebody online. I said, what are you seeing? And he says, I'm seeing your film. And I said, why? And he said, oh, it's great. And I said, what do you mean it's great? And he said, oh, it's this. It's bloody. And I said, you saw blood? I said, did you see the scalpels in the face? Oh, yeah. Did you see this? Oh, yeah. And I said, oh, okay. So then, shortly after that, maybe a month or two, they started advertising it as the uncut version.
Oh, of course.
They never contacted me. They never said to me, hey, Frank, you were right. We're wrong. We changed. No. Just, they were the geniuses. I was the idiot. Fine, thank you. Goodbye.
Wow. So I take it was your idea to go back to the old school way of doing things with a gimmick like William Castle, and you had these masks, surgical masks that you put on.
No, it wasn't my idea, and I wish it was. I wish I could take credit for that. In fact, I came up with a gimmick that they didn't want. That was after the film was in its second year at midnight, Analysis films ceased to exist. They disappeared off the face of the earth. I wept. And then we quickly gathered the prints from the other theaters, and we sold it to another company called Rugged Films that were based in New Jersey. Mm-hmm. And a man named Roger Grod took it out. He wanted to take it out of midnight and put it at regular screenings during the evening. Mm-hmm. And his idea was, we need a gimmick. And he said to me, what gimmick would you like to do? And I said, oh, I got a great one. Let's give out cardboard scalpels to everybody. And he just said, that's the worst idea I've ever heard. And I said, why? And he said, well, the first kid that sticks it in another kid's eye, we're going to be sued for. And I guess he was right. So it was Roger Gra's idea to buy these, flimsy surgical masks. They were made out of paper, basically. But you could get, maybe 10 for a penny. And he had girls that would stamp the words basket case on it. And they would give this out. And the radio ads were fabulous because the radio ads had this announcer going, free surgical masks to keep the blood off your face.
Yeah, we actually played those before you came on. Those are great.
Well, and they were great. And it did wonderful business. It really, really took off. And I actually have a box of those surgical masks left. But like I said, they're paper, so they're brown and they're flimsy, and you couldn't put one on because it would crumble. But I just love the fact that I still have a box of them,
You should get some of those framed, Frank.
Oh, I guess so, but, what the hell.
Well, if it breaks out in your area, I take it you probably still live in New York, right?
Oh, yeah.
Don't use the mask to keep yourself from getting the H1N1.
No.
Now, another thing, of course, the midnight movies and getting the uncut version released and everything definitely helped to catapult Basket Case's success. But another thing that helped was it kind of hit the video market right at the time that market was kind of taking off, right?
Well, yeah, but something else happened that I was very proud of at the time. When the video market was very new then. And, in fact, I didn't really understand it. And so, I remember when Edgar Ivins, the producer, said, hey, we sold the video rights to Basket Case. I'm thinking, great, what are they? It was that new, okay? But anyway, when it came out, when it was released on tape, on VHS and Betamax, remember that?
Yes.
Oh, yes,
VHS and Beta. When it was released on that, tapes were very expensive in those days. Hollywood films were selling for like $89.95. And so Basket Case came out, I think, for either $49 or $59, probably $59. That's what most of that stuff cost. And, okay, it sold fine, but it didn't sell great. It sold fine. About a year later, I'm reading in Variety about Media Home Entertainment, who had Basket Case, had this crazy idea of selling sell-through tapes at the then unheard of $19.95. It wasn't a sell-through market, so this was seen as something radical. So Variety was getting the opinions of all these other video company heads. What do you think of media doing this for $19.95? Oh, they're crazy. They're throwing the money away. They're going to ruin the market. No one is going to, And when I saw the list of films that media was going to release in 1995, it was a deadly bunch of films. It was films that you couldn't give away for free, pretty much, And I hadn't heard of any of these, and I'm thinking, well, And the more I thought of it, the more I thought, I wish Basket Case could sell for $19.95. Then every kid, every teenager with $20 in his wallet will buy it.
Right.
He can't afford to spend $60 on it, but what other gory, degenerate horror film is out there for him? So I first contacted Edgar Ivins, the producer, and he said, oh, I think it's a terrible idea because he's worried about our royalty becoming a third of what we'd normally get. And then, but I said to him, you've got to do this, Edgar. You've got to do this, or, I insist. So he reluctantly called Media Home Entertainment, and Media Home Entertainment thought it was a terrible idea. They said, well, it's a brand new film. We shouldn't, but if you guys want to, we'll do it. Well, it sold so phenomenally. It sold so well. Edgar calls me up, and he said, hey, you promised me, Frank, that that we would do at least 3 times our royalty numbers. And I said, yeah, what did we do? He goes, 9 times!
Wow.
There you go.
And that was in the summer. So media knew they had something on their hands. So that Halloween, all the mom-and-pop video stores got posters from them, got promotional materials, and Basket Case was selling that Halloween for $19.95. It was the only VHS horror movie, especially the only unrated, blood-soaked horror movie that you could get for $19.95. It sold a fortune. I made so much money that one year I was able to buy my New York apartment.
Wow,
Gee, there
good.
you go.
And I remember, a couple of people said, wow, well, next year. And I said, no, you don't understand. Next year it'll be over. And sure enough, the next year it was over, and $19.95 became the norm for sell-through. And even then, as the years went on, that was seen as too expensive. And, by the next Halloween, everybody with a horror film was selling theirs for $19.95. But for a brief window, we kicked ass out there.
See, it's the old theory that your children will always take care of you, and Belial took care of his father. By giving
well,
you your
he's not
apartment.
taking great care of me, I'll tell you that.
You don't happen to still have Belial, do you?
Yes, he sits in my living room.
Oh, my God!
Yeah,
Really?
there's two. You see, there were two Belials. One was a puppet Belial, which was basically hollow, and we operated like a puppet. And we had to pull his arms back and use rubber gloves where different people would operate the hands. Okay, and that was our main Belial. That was the Belial that popped out of the basket and went on people's heads and screamed. And anytime you saw his mouth moving, that was that Belial. The other Belial we had was a stiff Belial, which was I used for the stop motion animation. And any time you didn't see Belial with his mouth open. And it's also the one that had his eyes glow.
Right.
And that's the one I own. The puppet Belial, Edgar Ivans owns, lives with him in Boston. And the other Belial, the stop-motion Belial, lives in Manhattan with me. And he's falling apart, but then so am I.
Aren't we all?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask you on one thing now. You said horror film, and everybody's going to say horror film. But in reality, you don't like to be called a horror director. You like to be called an exploitation director.
Well, I think they are exploitation films. I have nothing against being called a horror director. I'm not insulted by it, and, I wallow in horror. I just think they're not really horror films, and I think that's the problem. They're as much comedies as they are horror films,
right.
And with the case of something like Bad Biology, what the hell is that? I don't know if it's a horror film at all. I mean, it has a monster in it. People get killed, but is that a horror film? I don't really know. It's to me, it's like a horrific sexploitation film.
I think the word "fucked up" comes into play.
Okay, I'll buy that one.
But that's a good thing, because I need therapy, but I just loved it.
Well, good.
Definitely. So let me ask you this. What's the difference between a horror film and an exploitation film? You said they're pretty close, but...
Well, I think an exploitation film can put more elements in. I mean, an exploitation film isn't bound by the traditions of a horror film, And I think the horror films in general have a formula, and I never felt that exploitation films did. Exploitation films kind of throw everything but the kitchen sink into it. You have a little bit of this, a little bit of that, some action, some violence, some bare tits, and boom, and comedy, and get out and hope the theater doesn't burn down. Those were the films that I was always attracted to. Now, we're playing with semantics here because horror films by nature are exploitation films,
right.
But then again, if you really want to stretch the point, so is Avatar an exploitation film.
Yeah.
But I'm talking about, the grindhouse type label that would be used for an exploitation film.
Now, those types of films actually is kind of what got you interested in films and filmmaking, with a focus on, I guess you used to go to a lot of the theaters on 42nd Street.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That was the greatest film school on the planet. Oh my God, I didn't think there was a paradise like that on Earth. And I grew up on Long Island where we had two movie theaters in town, and I thought that was great because I grew up in an era where you had Vincent Price, Edgar Allan Poe films at one theater, and you had other science fiction and horror films at this theater, and there were wonderful moments when which films am I going to see this weekend? That was wonderful, but I could never envision a place where there was movie theater next to movie theater next to movie theater next to movie theater. Until I finally stumbled upon 42nd Street, and I would cut high school when I was 15, and come in, take the train into Manhattan, and just go there all day long and watch movies. And what was great is if in between the theaters were, of course, the early sex shops, that later became full-blown porno stores. So, fine, there was always some reading material I happened to need, you know what I mean?
Of course.
So, what more paradise do you need but grindhouse movie theaters and dirty bookstores? I'm in paradise.
If you go to heaven, I believe that's what it is.
Yeah,
Definitely.
yeah. And I never, I'm 15 years old. I looked like I was 12 at the time. I had a full head of hair. I was always very short and thin, so I looked younger than I was. And I never had any trouble. If somebody's trying to sell you drugs, or there's some, guy dressed up in a cowboy costume asking if you want to take him home, once you express you're not interested, they were already on the next customer behind you.
Yes.
Right.
So I really had no trouble on the street. You just go there for the movies, and and I learned a lot of street culture inside the theater, where I saw, oh well, this is how the audience behaves when they like a film, and this is how they behave when they don't like a film. Well, that's interesting.
Well,
and it was marvelous. It was a marvelous film school. And my biggest problem with 42nd Street was not what am I going to see, but how many films I could see.
Right.
Definitely.
It was just wonderful. And when I finally moved into Manhattan, I was there literally, we're talking 7 nights out of the week. And often, seeing a good night would be at least 3 movies. Then you'd run out of time, but that would be a good evening. But if I could cram at least 1 or 2 in, that would be fine.
Well, growing up in New York really made you what you are in the fact that your films have that, what I call the gritty New York look to it.
Yeah.
And that's basically your thing. I mean, if you'd have grown up in Pennsylvania,
Iowa.
well, then you'd have been doing zombie films. But if you'd grown up anywhere else, it probably wouldn't have been the same, would it?
No, I guess not. I mean, it's what I guess you film what you know, and I knew that Manhattan, and I loved walking around the streets. I loved prowling around the streets, and whenever I would write, I would usually write by walking. So I was always in Times Square when I was writing Basket Case, and same with Brain Damage. And it's changed now. All that is gone. I mean, to say it's gone is pretty much an understatement. Literally, the buildings are gone.
Right.
So it's not like the movie theater's gone; the entire buildings are missing. And it's all, it's just German tourists, and it's like, it's hell. It's horrible.
Yeah.
I remember a friend was coming in from New Hampshire a couple of weeks ago by bus, and I was going to meet him because he didn't know the city, and calls me and he says, we're going to be delayed at least 45 minutes to an hour. I said, no problem, I'll walk around. I figured, I'll do what I always did back on 42nd Street. I'll find a dirty bookstore to walk through. I'll walk through some porno store. That's what I always loved doing, browsing the porno video boxes. Mm-hmm. Well, I'm walking through Times Square, and I couldn't find a porno store. And I'm thinking, what kind of what madness has engulfed the world when I'm in Times Square and I can't find a dirty bookstore in my own hometown? What's going on, folks?
Even in downtown Hollywood, Frank, we can find those.
Yeah, and the hookers,
I know.
Well,
they really cleaned it up. It was all Disney. It was all about that. It was all about the Musketeer money, and that's that.
Now, part of this going to theaters and stuff, or maybe you did this before, influenced you in the fact that you start out making 8mm and 16mm films, right?
Yeah, but I was making the 8mm films even before I was coming into 42nd Street. I just loved movies, so I would just watch them on TV, or like I said, in my small hometown. I just loved the process of making a film, and I was fascinated by the editing. That's always what still gets me, is how can 2 shots cut together seamlessly? How can you make 2 shots that shouldn't cut together work?
Right.
I was always fascinated by the simple mechanics of what constructs shots in a film. So I was always playing with that, and I was never interested in the technical side of it. So even when I was shooting my 8mm films, f-stops. What the hell are those? Don't bother me with that. So many times I had films that everything was too dark or too bright or completely out of focus. It didn't occur to me that maybe maybe I should learn a couple of simple technical points about this stuff. I just wasn't really interested in that. I just wanted to do close-ups and see how this works and how animation works and how special effects work, and I had a lot of fun doing that. I would so screw up effects that I remember once looking at a double exposure that was by accident and saying, oh, wait a minute, look at that, look what color is bleeding through and look what color isn't. And next weekend I did my first Invisible Man movie. I didn't even do an Invisible Man movie. I just did the Invisible Man taking off his bandages and showing you he's got no head. Because I was bored with an Invisible Man beyond that. But I learned that if you have white bandages on, and you had a face covered in black, and you did it off, and you superimposed that on a wall that wasn't brightly lit. Hey, it looked like, look at this. So I was constantly making films. I never finished half of what I started. I never finished 80% of what I started. It was just the nature of grinding things through the camera and then looking at them and going, aha, let me try this. No point. I never thought it would be a career. In fact, I still don't think it's a career.
Do you have enough of the stock left around that maybe you could ever put it out on a DVD? You might not think people's interested
Even
in
as
that.
features.
Oh, no. First of all, no, I wouldn't want to.
Oh,
They
okay.
are home movies. They really are home movies. They're really a kid in his backyard.
Mm-hmm.
Even when I was, a teenager, even when I was going through college and I was making them, I wasn't making them to show, really. I was just making them to make them.
Right.
Right.
So they're full of, excesses that I would be embarrassed to release to the public today. I mean, and bad jokes. I mean, I'm the king of wallowing in bad jokes, and I knew I could get away with this stuff because I'm making an 8mm movie.
Right.
I only started getting serious about it when I moved into 16mm, and then I thought, well, if you're gonna, the cost of 16mm, I got to take things a little differently, and blah blah blah. So, when I was playing with them, it was different, but I didn't last too long at 16mm because Basket Case came along, and we jumped from me making 16mm shorts to all of a sudden I'm making a feature in 16mm.
Well, of course we want to talk about some of your other films like Brain Damage and Frankenhooker and more about bad biology, but you have to understand that a lot of our listeners are videophiles. They are the collectors and the film historians, and they'll find the most obscure thing, and they'll want to know about it. So when everyone heard that you were coming on the show this weekend, we got a lot of emails and comments and questions wanting us to ask you about two shorts, Slash of the Knife and Son of Psycho.
Okay. 8mm film. So Son of Psycho was an 8mm film. It was about a kid who, I played the part because I was the only one who I knew would show up every day. But I read something once about somebody who, I think in England, had seen Psycho and murdered a girl and claimed that the film influenced the murder. I don't know if that's true. I didn't even care, but that was my version. I had made a film about a young man who was totally obsessed with the movie Psycho and wanted to kill a woman the way Janet Leigh died in the shower, and he could never find the right woman.
Right.
And it was really sick. And then it's just really a piece of lurid, I just was having a wonderful time. I shot it like a film noir. It was very great, dark photography, but, we were squirting blood everywhere, it was not a film that, you would be proud of. It was a film of pure, kind of sophomoric excess, but that was the fun of it.
Right.
What was the other film?
The other one was Slash of the Knife, which
Slash of the Knife was shot in 16mm. Son of Psycho, by the way, was what actually ran an hour, and it was in 8mm with. Used to send a film out. I sent a film. I think it was Kodak who did. They would actually burn like a magnetic sound stripe on it.
Right, yeah, I used to do that.
Yeah, and certain projectors that I had a German projector that let you record, it let you overdub the sound. So you'd be there with a microphone and records, and Doris Wishman style doing all the dubbing. Why, yes, come in, and then taking two feet to go click, 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 moving a chair to go sit, It was really, really stupid, but that was the fun of it, And then, frantically switching music, and, there's no sound mix, so whatever it was. And unfortunately, those films, have all fallen apart. Over the years, the splices come undone, and the sound itself is peeled off the film. Mm. So there's no way they can ever be shown.
Right.
They just there's only one print you ever made, and the print has since fallen apart. So that's the end of my 8mm career.
God, we had a guest on recently that actually did a feature, but he did it on Super 8.
Well, Super 8's different. Super 8 was. I'm older than Super 8, and I started in the 8mm world. And by the time Super 8 came out, I was already, all of my toys, my editor and my splicer, I was well into regular 8. I didn't need an upgrade. And besides, I jumped into 16mm by then,
Yes. Yeah. Now, you've always worked on film. Is that a personal choice? Because everyone's wanting to do digital. It's so much cheaper.
No, I love film. That's what you see. That's what I used to see in the movie theaters.
Yes.
I like seeing emulsion on plastic. I like scratches.
Absolutely. I mean,
I like dust.
You.
I like the fact of what celluloid is. So I have no aversion to film. In fact, I love it. So I love working on film.
Now,
as for Slash of the Knife, let me see. That was a 16mm sound show. That was the first sync sound thing I ever did, and we did it right before Basket Case. In fact, a number of the people from Basket Case are in it. Kevin Van Hentenryck plays 3 parts in it. Robert Vogel, who is the hotel manager, plays a real bum in this one. And it was just a half-hour short, and it was meant to be a 1954 sex hygiene film about the horrors of being uncircumcised. And it showed there was a friend of mine put the money up for it, and he thought he could recoup the cost. I don't know why he put the money up in the first place to make this, but he thought we could get it shown. And it was shown once in the Village. It was supposed to run in the Village with Pink Flamingos at a theater called the Cinema Village, which is still there, believe it or not. I think it is. And the manager was so offended with the film that he yanked it after the first screening. So that's that. But
he yanked yours and kept
Pink Flamingos?
Yeah.
What the hell?
I don't know. I didn't ask. I don't even care. I'm thinking I'm not going to ask somebody what did you think? What did you find offensive about it? He did. That's it. Fine. Goodbye. You know.
That had to be a compliment. So you outgross people more than John Waters.
I don't know if I outgross people. I obviously must have touched a nerve with the hotel manager. Maybe he wasn't. Maybe he was uncircumcised. I don't know.
That had to be.
Maybe he took it seriously. I don't know.
The question from the chat room they want to know is knowing that you use film, I suppose, is part of the answer, but in knowing that you're also low budget, how do you make your films look so damn good with the money you have to work with?
Well, that's the trick, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, you just try to. What happens if I start coughing? I have got a bad cold. I'm going to cough.
We fart, whatever you want to do.
No, okay, good. Not too bad. Usually you just try to compose it with, make a good shot and make enough lighting. That's the trick to making it look good. With Bad Biology, we shot it in 35 millimeter, and we didn't have the money to shoot it in 35 millimeter. And I really insisted on it because I felt that given how sleazy the story is, or potentially sleazy or whatever, anytime you're dealing with sex and you're dealing with bad taste, I thought the more it looked like a real film and the more it was shot in 35 millimeter and the more formal it looked, it would go against the grain of the subject. And I thought that kind of juxtaposition of looking good and being about sex would be more interesting. I thought if I shot it video, it would have been too easy to dismiss. You know what I mean?
Right.
I thought it would be too, just another sleazy video shot on, porno type thing. So the trick there was, of course, just trying not to waste your budget in 35 millimeter, which is difficult. You had to keep the shooting. I'll tell you how bad it was. We went into Technicolor, which is a couple blocks away from me now, and they used to be a big, huge lab. Now they're, and but still, I like the idea that I had the film, done by Technicolor. And
right.
We went in there, and the guy said to us, "How much film are you going to shoot?" And we said, "Well, we bought 47,000 feet." And he says, "Oh, you're doing a short."
Oh.
He said, "No, we're doing a feature." And he went, "Oh, not with 47,000 feet." "Yes, buddy, with 47,000 feet."
Well, he didn't know you were going to do one take.
Well, I think we ended up using 51,000.
Yeah.
So, anyway. So that's that. So you just got to plan it, and, and I had, I've had the benefit of working with good directors of photography in the past. And for Basket Case, not for Basket Case, God knows I shot that one. That's, no. For Bad Biology, we had a guy named Nicholas Deek who did it, a young kid, and he was great. And he loves lighting, and he loves all the technical stuff that I hate, and we just worked very well together. He thought I was completely insane. And I don't think he really thought the film was ever going to really get shown. And now that he sees it, he loves it, and he can't wait till we do another one.
So how did you end up getting involved with R.A. the Rugged Man?
Well, R.A., when R.A. was 19 years old, he was signed by Jive Records. And they wanted to do a music video, and he was a fan of Basket Case and Brain Damage. So he called me up out of the blue, and he said, would you like to do a music video? And I said, what kind is it? He said, hip-hop. And I said, well, I don't know the first thing about hip-hop, so yeah. And we became really good friends. The most difficult thing was he spoke in, street talk.
Right.
Right.
So I was constantly saying to him, what does that mean? Well, it's fat. No, it's not. It's thin. No, fat means good. Oh, all right. Okay, so fat means all right. Yeah. So I was constantly asking him to translate stuff, and then I was, using to him highfalutin words. So it was great. We were constantly learning each other's vocabulary.
It was kind of like the two cops in Sanford and Son, the one that was hip and the one.
To this day, I cannot speak fluently in hip hop, but I can understand it. So, I started showing him films I loved, and he started loving them as much as I did, and then beyond the boundaries of exploitation film. I remember the day he's sitting there and he's scowling at me, and I go, what's the matter? And he's looking over my shoulder and he goes, you got Fellini on the shelf. I said, yeah. And he goes, why? And I said, because they're great films. And, he's a little dubious. Isn't it an art film? Yes, it is. You know what, R? Why don't you take home, borrow my copy of Fellini's Satyricon, watch it, and come back and we'll talk. And he came back and went, holy shit, I got to see more of this guy.
Oh, wow.
And then after we're doing that and going through a bunch of those European directors, I remember one day he said to me, okay, I get it now, but why do you have silent movies? How could you stand watching a silent movie? I said, okay, I'm going to give you a film by Buster Keaton called Sherlock Jr. Watch it, come back to me and we'll talk. He came back and goes, I need to see everything Keaton made. I said, you're right.
Yeah.
So he was a very avid film lover, and that was our common language was movies.
It's an incredible relationship because you guys are like the odd couple of cinema.
Oh yeah, we're the odd couple of everything. But that was what was fun. And Wednesdays we would have a routine where we'd always get together and write something in the afternoon, and then we'd walk down to Kim's down at St. Mark's, and that was the day that they got the new releases in, and we'd buy all our shit down there.
Well,
that was our life for many years.
It's smart too because it's really. I've got several director friends, and they're just struggling so hard to get financing. And where's the money? It's in the rap industry.
Well, yeah, but still, you just have to struggle to get out. I don't think R.A. raised the bad biology money from the rap industry. He raised it from friends he knew.
Ah.
Who trusted him. This wasn't an excess of rap money from somewhere. This didn't come from any record labels.
Right.
These were friends who he knew and that trusted him, and they gave him the money.
Oh, he's got good friends.
Yeah, and that's where that came from, and I don't think it comes from. I don't think it comes from any one source. I think you just got to find out. You got to find the people that are going to par with it.
Right. Now he casted Bad Biology, right?
Oh yes, he did all the casting on that.
And the two stars of the film were really amazing. The first one we wanted to ask you about was the female lead, Jennifer Charlie Danielson.
Who I'm in love with, by the way.
Well, you should be.
God.
She is marvelous.
What was it like working with her? Because, as a female watching your film, I took particular delight in the scene where she was bashing the guy's head in with the lamp while she was crying and apologizing.
Exactly. That's the scene she loved also. That was the key to the character, okay? And what Charlie did is she read the first. She was going out with R.A. at the time.
Mm-hmm.
So she read the first 30 pages, and she loved it. And that startled me, and she said, ask Frank if he'd be interested in having me play it. Well, I already knew her. She was in an earlier music video we did, and I loved her. And I thought, that would be phenomenal. But, and I tried to scare her a bit, like, well, Charlie, you don't know what we're going to do with this. And she loved the character so much. She really understood. She really related to it as a woman, despite the fact that the character of Jennifer is completely insane.
Right.
But she said that didn't take away from it. She understood the problem she was going through. It was just exaggerated. That's all. So she really felt it was a part that empowered her, and she really had a good time and a fun time getting into it. And she always surprised me on the set how strong she was too.
Was some of that ad-lib?
Oh, no, it was not. But that's the mark of a good performance.
That you make it look like it's ad-lib.
Yes, it looked like she was coming up with that on the spot. No, it wasn't.
The greatest thing, now, I don't even know, maybe, you're an old classic comedy fan, you love Keaton, so do I. I don't know, maybe you got this from Laurel and Hardy. The scene where she breaks the third wall when she's disposing of the baby, and she looks and talks to the camera.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it did work, and I am a huge fan of Laurel and Hardy, specifically Oliver Hardy.
Yeah.
I don't think there's anyone that's ever been funnier in the whole history of humanity than Oliver, who just needs to just glance at the camera for me to fall off the chair laughing.
Yeah.
Definitely. So now the other lead, which was Anthony Sneed. Okay,
right.
Now he was actually found on MySpace.
He really wasn't. No. Actually, a friend of his told him about it, and he contacted RA. That's really how it happened. It sounds good, but it's not really what happened. But nevertheless, we didn't know who he was beforehand. And Anthony was came to the reading cold, and I thought he had a great face. And RA would do all the interviews film the interviews without me there, which was good. So I didn't have to reject anybody in person. He would just film it and then show me the tapes, and I would say, oh, this person's good or this person is terrible, and let's move on. And then when we called them back, then I would meet with the people. Okay, so we were looking at Anthony, and then at one point, RA says, this guy's supposed to be a junkie. Can we see what you look like with your shirt off? And Anthony did, and he looked really kind of. And I'm very overweight, so I could say this, but he looked plump. He looked a little heavy on film.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, well, he's got a great face, but he's not going to look like anybody that's junky. He looks like he's somebody that, So I didn't take him seriously. I just said, just blow it off. And RA mentioned it to Anthony. He said, no, Frank said you look too chunky. And Anthony said, well, wait a minute. How long do we, I can lose some weight. And RA said to him, well, we're going to start shooting in a month. He said, I'll lose 30 pounds in a month. Yeah, okay, sure.
Jeez.
So Anthony did.
Oh
he ran.
God.
He wanted the part so much, he ran every day. He ran over the Williamsburg Bridge, back and forth, and he got on a diet, and he dropped 30 pounds.
You want to know why? How many films can you be in where you get the opportunity to fuck a vacuum cleaner?
Well, he showed up, and I was stunned. And then when he showed up, he was so nervous that his reading was really terrible, but I also saw in him what a commitment he just made. And I knew that, fine, he's nervous now, but he'll commit to doing this, and we'll get a performance out of him. And that's exactly what we did.
Incredible chemistry between the two.
Oh, yeah. Well, they had a great time with each other, but, like everybody else, they didn't read the script. They didn't read the complete script. I offered it to both of them, and they said, no, they'd rather not know what the other one's pages were.
Right.
And Anthony in the script didn't know he'd be fucking a vacuum cleaner. In the script, he's just fucking. I think it was just a square box. But RA found that great old Hoover, one of those old Electrolux vacuum cleaners. Oh my God, that's my mom used to use that in the 50s. It was fabulous, so we had to use that. You know what I mean?
And of course, we like to give a disclaimer: don't try this at home.
Right.
It's up to professionals.
Well, how do you know? Maybe it works great at home.
I kept yelling at the character because he was so obsessed with sex, and I don't want to give anything away, but he was always being bothered by it, and there's special reasons for that. I don't know what you want to say about that, but I kept wanting to scream at the TV where I was watching it, turn off the damn porn, because all he was doing was showing porn. And it's no wonder his dick was just like, yeah, okay.
Yeah, but when you're, you know what it is. I mean, who's, he was obsessed by it, but he wasn't able to get it.
Right.
So I'm glad you made a movie about the story of my life.
Well, yeah, but I thought how wonderful that he has to have three TV sets on playing different pieces of porn, three different porn movies. That's somebody that's out of control.
Right.
And he's not even watching them. Did you notice that?
Yeah, it was
practice to them.
just background noise.
Yeah.
Was there an issue on this set to where any of your cast or crew became offended? Because I know there was issue with that before with brain damage.
Oh, there was an issue with that on Basket Case, too. The crew walked out when the monster got on top of the girl and I put the blood on. The moment I put the blood on, everybody left, and they were really pissed off, and I thought, fine, fuck yourselves. I don't give a shit, you know? Get out of here. And then they did it again on brain damage. So that's why we didn't give the script out.
Right.
You know, it's always an issue with sexual things. I don't need a crew telling. I don't need the opinions of a crew member telling me what is acceptable or what isn't acceptable. That's not his job. You know? So I don't really care what their opinions are. Right. So I don't need it. So best left, you know, what they don't know they can't complain about. So we never told them. So they would be watching the film, and you know, there's so much work, and you're sort of isolating parts of the film. It never really gelled. I don't think anyone on the crew thought really how strong this was until the second week when Gabe Bartalo showed up, and he rigged Anthony with that monster dick. And then the crew members' jaws dropped and their eyes fell out, and oh my God, there was a moment where everything came to a standstill. Everybody's just standing there going, oh! Wondering what are we making? And it was like, all right, let's go. It didn't give them really a chance to, you know, react to anything. Strangely enough, it didn't play like a sex-crazed movie when we were making it. You know, it's only after it's edited and all put together it plays like a sex screen.
Well, you know, it's crazy. You're talking about the cast walking out on some of your films and that. We were on a set for a week of a friend that made a porno, but it happened to be a horror film. And he told me that there's a certain amount of blood you can have with sex or you play hell getting it released.
Huh. Well, I don't know anything about that.
Well, that's good. I'm glad you don't.
Because the film's actually being released without a rating, right?
Oh yeah. Well, what's the point? What do you really think Do you really think the MPAA is going to give it an R? I mean, seriously, folks. So why spend the money and go through that abuse?
Right.
Well, one of the best things in Brain Damage is we give out Cult Radio Awards here, and we just gave an honorary award to the greatest horror host that ever lived, John Zachary.
Oh yeah.
And he was the voice in your movie.
Yeah. And he also did. He also cameoed in Frankenhooker.
Yes, as the weatherman.
Wow.
As the weatherman, yeah. And at the time we made Brain Damage, I didn't know until the very end that Zachary was SAG, and it was a non-SAG film. And if we had put his name on the credits, he would have been fine, not us.
Right.
So that's why we didn't do it. I know there's a lot of people huffed and puffed and thought we were trying to jip him out of credit, but no, he was the one who would have been hurt, not us.
Right.
And when we did Frankenhooker was a SAG film, so that was my way of paying him back. I thought, let me get him in, and let me get him as the weatherman, as Zachary. And he was thrown by that at first. He goes, how would I play a weatherman? I said, play a weatherman the way you would anything else. He goes, oh, as myself? I go, yeah. And he goes, all right, great. So and he did it.
Well, we've got 10 minutes left, and I'm really so happy that you're giving us an hour. Man, you're just such a legend. I could go on and on and on. But I want to talk about Frankenhooker because I just love that film. To give you an idea about how much we love that film, my daughter dressed up as Frankenhooker when she was 16.
I'm actually Terry's daughter, and I've been raised watching films like yours and Herschel Gordon Lewis and John Waters. And when I was 16, going on 17 for Halloween, I dressed up as Frankenhooker, and I had, the purple miniskirt and bra and the shoes and the fishnets and the hair, and nobody knew who, they're like, are you a hooker? I'm like, no, I'm...
She got
well, I'm very proud of you.
Thank you.
You got a great start on life.
So, that's my claim to fame. I told John Waters that I showed Pink Flamingos to her when she was 16, and I dressed her up as Frankenhooker for you. So.
Wow. Well, that's wonderful. You got a great education in life.
Is it true that Patty Mullen still calls you and leaves voice messages that says...
Whenever Patty calls, she has never, ever said, hi, this is Patty. She picks up the phone and she goes, want a date? Going out? Looking for some action? That's how I know it's Patty.
Wow.
Now,
she's a doll. She was so wonderful to work with. And also, by the way, of all the things I've ever done on film, my favorite sequence is still blowing up those hookers in that hotel room. I don't think there's any greater joy in life you can have than blowing up hookers in a hotel room.
So
it was
that was
so
kind
much
of
fun. It had us laughing. We didn't know how much explosives to put in. We didn't know what the hell we were doing. You know, we had a guy from the fire department there. He didn't know how much excuse me, sir, how much explosives he put in there to make our head fly. We go, how the hell do I know? So, you know, we were just winging it. And we had these marvelous explosions, and we never knew what the model, you know, the models would blow up in real time. We didn't know what we had until we saw the footage, which was slowed down. And, you know, all we would know is these body parts would come raining down on us, on fire and burning. You know, it was just completely insane.
Can you imagine trying to give a police report if something happened? Like, what happened, sir? Oh, we were blowing up hookers.
Yeah, I know, but we had to. We actually did it because of insurance. So we had to schedule it. So there was a somebody from the fire department there, and I mean, you know, we did it correctly, but I don't think anybody really understood what we were really doing. And I think we just said we're blowing up some models, which is true, which is all they were. But you know, we didn't fill out a form saying blowing up hookers. In fact, when we started shooting that movie, they kept telling me how we couldn't get locations, we couldn't get product placement, we couldn't get any cooperation. So I thought, I know exactly what the problem is. So I announced to the whole, you know, cast and crew within the second week that I just changed the title. It's not called Frankenhooker. It is now called Frankenstein 90. And all the copies of the script went out with the title Frankenstein 90.
Really?
Magically, overnight.
Yeah.
We got locations and product placement, and people wanted to be in it.
It was the stigma of the hooker.
Yeah, it sounded like a porno or something like that.
Wow.
You know? And SGE, the company that funded it, got upset. Got a call. They said, "You're not changing the title." I said, "No, of course not." I said, "We just did it." Oh, that's a great idea. Okay.
See, you're old school. You know all the tricks. You're probably like reborn from somebody that went out and put up the tents.
Well, no, you don't know the tricks until you're in the middle of the battle, and then you figure, "What the hell do I do?" You know?
Is it true that Frankenhooker was kind of just made up on the spot?
No. The initial idea was, but you know, I had a couple of weeks to write the script, and I did ad lib the story to Jim Glickenhaus.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know I had it in my head, you know, and I was just racing through this, making it up on the spot. The more he was laughing, the more I kept embellishing it. We got outside. I turned to Edgar Ivins and I said, "What the hell did I just say up there?" And he started telling me, and I'm writing it down. I'm taking notes based on because I didn't remember what I said.
Right.
And I'm writing it down, and I went, "Holy shit, I got to make this thing?"
Well, it was a great cast because not only Patty Mullen, but also James. You pronounce the name Lorenz, or
James Lorenz, right?
Yeah. And he made up a lot of his stuff. I mean, he did a lot of ad libbing.
He did. He's the only one who ad libbed in one of my films. But you know, he didn't ad lib when the camera was running. He would ad lib when we would block the shot.
Mm-hmm.
And his ad libs just had me on the floor. They were
hilarious.
so perfect. They were so excellent. Absolutely. You know, I mean, there was he was just terrific with that. And he also he has this great way of speaking. So like even the stuff that he didn't ad lib, he made it sound like he made that up too. He had a great, you know, that's a mark of a good comic actor, that they can take a word that's on the page and make it sound like, you know, they just came up with it on the spot. But yeah, he contributed a lot of great lines to that film that, you know, I had all I could do not to laugh.
And was it Frankenhooker? You got a quote for the film from Bill Murray?
Say again?
Didn't you get a quote about Frankenhooker for the film from Bill Murray?
Yeah. Well, Bill was doing the sound mix for, I think it was Quick Change. I think that's the film. He was doing that in the daytime, and we had that room in the evening. So we overlapped, and he saw the film, and he became a big fan of it. And it was wonderful.
Well, I didn't even realize he was that kind of a movie fan. I guess he is. He did a really great comedic scene in the new movie Zombieland. So I think maybe he wants to be a cult movie star. He wants to be in these kind of films.
He's a closet cult movie star.
Yeah.
Oh, I just think he's a great comic talent. Period.
Yeah,
you know,
definitely.
I only met him while we were doing Frankenhooker. I never met him before or since. But he was a gentleman to us. He loved the film enough, so he extended that to letting us. he had all these toys in the room, stuff he was using, ping pong tables and stuff, exercise things. He let us play with all that. He would hang around. He was very inspirational. Just to have him there laughing at your movie gave me such a high. It's unbelievable. You know, he just really was a prince with that.
Well, I want to let you know we get a lot of feedback here, and emails came pouring in, and I know that you don't like sequels. People are on their knees waiting for Frankenhooker 2.
Well, don't stay there. Don't stay on those knees. I don't. You know,
what can we do to convince you, Uncle Frank?
It's a great joke. I think the joke is over once the. You know, I'd rather take the whole cast from Frankenhooker and do something new.
Really?
We'll settle for that.
Yeah, we'll settle for that. As long as she says, "Hey, you want a date?" You know?
Well, as we wrap this up, we want to thank you for being on the air, but we also wanted to take a moment to thank you for all the work that you've done with Something Weird and all of the films that you've restored, including and saved from oblivion, you know, such as The Curious Dr. Hump.
Yeah, we have saved films that the world would rather we had let die.
Well, not the world, maybe mainstream media.
Yeah, right, okay. Yeah,
and you're actually
a few of us are happy.
Yeah.
You're actually working on something with Something Weird. Say a couple words there together. On another man.
Well, actually, through Something Weird, we just finished a documentary on Herschel Gordon Lewis.
Great, because that's what I'm getting at. He was on the show, and he's a very dear man. He actually sang 2000 Maniacs with us.
Yeah, well, he does in our film also.
Fantastic. So as we end this, as a teaser, okay, I know you got to be working on something. Can you give us a clue, or is there something that works?
Well, I'll tell you what I'm working on. That I can tell you what I'm working on.
Okay.
Is another documentary for Something Weird called That's Exploitation.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Fantastic.
And beyond that, who knows?
And are you going to be appearing at any conventions or anything this year? Because I know everyone's
wanting
wanting
I hope not.
I know everyone's wanting to pick up.
No, I've had so many. I've had so much fun being a recluse for so many years. Why spoil it? I mean, I did a little bit of promotion for Bad Biology. I met fans in Los Angeles and Seattle and New York and that, and you know, and that was wonderful. But let's not get carried away.
Okay.
Well, God, I want to thank you so much. You just completed my trinity for me, because my three favorite directors, of course, with you right at the top, is John Waters and Herschel Gordon Lewis. And now that I've talked to you, I've interviewed all three. It's just, I can die now. Yes.
Well, I'm in good company. Thank you.
All right. You have a wonderful night, Frank. Thank you so much.
All right. Thank you, guys.
All right. Bye-bye.